Welcome into Outkick the Show. I hope all of you had fantastic weekends wherever you may be across this great country or this great land. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I had a fantastic weekend. Spent yesterday on a boat on a lake in the great state of Tennessee. I hope many of you had fantastic weekends as well. And we are now attacking the new week. We got several different things to run through here. The coronavirus update. The NFL finds itself drawn back into the Anthem controversy. Major League Baseball cannot get things figured out. The LA Galaxy is firing people for what their family members tweet now or Instagram. Elmer Fudd can't have a gun in a cartoon. And the dumbest argument that I have ever seen in the history of the 21st century in the United States we will discuss. But we begin with this fact: the coronavirus is rapidly on retreat. Yesterday, according to the COVID tracking project, there were 453 deaths from the coronavirus in the entire country. That's the lowest number since March the 26th. We had just a 4.4% positivity rate, meaning, and you guys know I'm always tough when I do a live math, but I believe that means 95.6% of all people who went to get coronavirus tests did not have it. So all of that is moving in a very positive direction. As if that were not enough, we're also getting more and more evidence that the decision-making surrounding the coronavirus has been insanely misinformed. The WHO, the World Health Organization, which got initially many things wrong coming out of China, has now come out looking at all of the data from around the world, and they are saying, the WHO is, that asymptomatic spread of the coronavirus is, quote, very rare. That is, people who do not know that they are sick are very rarely, if ever, spreading this disease. Okay? So, it turns out that the advice we needed to give is, if you're sick, stay home. And don't allow anybody with the coronavirus into nursing homes, because this virus is incredibly dangerous to the extremely elderly and the extremely sick. Otherwise, it is almost zero impact on young and healthy people. And so this is crazy, right? That we have made all of these decisions. I have to say, the stock market, I told you this a couple months ago. I said, buy stocks. If you watch this show, I said, I'm putting every spare dollar I have into the stock market. And I told you to buy even as it was going down, because nobody knows exactly where the bottom is going to hit. So I was buying at 24, I was buying at 23, I was buying at 22, 21, 19. When it got down to 18, I brought every spare dollar that I had to my name and I put it in the stock market. And right now, the stock market is back above 27,000. This is the greatest 50-plus day stretch in the history of the stock market. And the reason why it has surged is all of these Wall Street investment banks stopped paying attention to the fear porn. They stopped listening to all the politicians, and they got their own experts to analyze the coronavirus data. And what they recognized was we had wildly overreacted. And it's going to take years probably for us to get our economy back into place where it was in February. But the data is, if you were smart enough to make a move and go out and buy stocks as stocks prices were falling, you probably have made more money in the last 2 months than you will at any time in many of your lives from just buying blindly stocks. If you bought the right stocks, which I told you to go buy gambling stocks, if you bought sports gambling stocks, you've made an absolute mint. So I can't always guarantee that I'm going to be as nails as I was on that prediction. And I can't always guarantee you guys that you're going to make a ton of money following my advice in gambling or anything else. But I put my money where my mouth is. And I made an absolute ton of money. And I hope you guys have made a lot of money as well by going out and trusting that the data didn't ever supported the collapse that we saw surrounding the coronavirus. And by the way, it's why every sports league should be back. The NBA should be playing right now. the Major League Baseball should be playing right now. And the data may well reflect, actually, that they should be playing in front of full houses or as many people as want to buy tickets and go watch them play. Because the ultimate impact, I believe, that is going to be the most significant and straightforward is we're going to have a really good test right now on whether large groups of young people spread the coronavirus massively. Because there were protests all over this country over the last 2 weeks. And so far, there's no substantial rise in the overall number of coronavirus cases in this country. And so what we're going to find out is whether asymptomatic spread is very common at all or not. And there is going to be a strong argument if the answer is no over the next 10 days or so, because the average incubation period is 4 or 5 days. So if you got this virus from the early stages of the protest, then you would be showing up right now, and we're not seeing any surge in cases. And if that is the case, that there's not going to be a surge of cases from these protests, then there's no argument we can't have full stadiums this fall. I mean that seriously, because the virus, people want to talk about the basically justification to protest, and they want to analyze whether this makes sense or that makes sense. The virus doesn't care. The virus spreads, if it's going to spread, based on the situation that allows the spreading to occur. The virus isn't discriminating and saying, oh, I was going to get these people sick, but what they are protesting is so legitimate that I'm not going to get them sick. The virus doesn't know the difference between a protest and a football game. And so it's possible that the data is all going to reflect, hey, open up all the stadiums. We saw all these protests, which have tens of thousands of people in the streets day after day after day, and people didn't get sick. Why are we not allowing people to go watch sports in person? The NFL anthem, okay? Everybody wants to give their opinion on the anthem. And what I find most common is the case is most people in America support First Amendment rights for people who protest in favor of things that they support. And an easy analogy that I've been making for years here that blows a lot of people's mind is, okay, let's say you love Colin Kaepernick and you love the idea of him protesting during the national anthem. Flip what he's protesting for and see if you still love it. Okay, that's the test of whether or not you really support the First Amendment. So pretend Colin Kaepernick is protesting against gay marriage. Takes a knee during the national anthem to protest gay marriage. How many people out there are still big Colin Kaepernick supporters? What you're supporting is not Colin Kaepernick or the First Amendment by and large. You're supporting someone who has the same political beliefs as you. And by the way, the reverse can be true as well. If you're opposed to Colin Kaepernick, you are often opposed to his politics. What I am is straightforward. I'm a First Amendment absolutist. But I don't think it's good business to allow players, or anyone else for that matter, to protest in uniform at work. Okay? I own a bunch of different parts of a bunch of different businesses, right? Let's say at one of the bars that I own a part of, somebody who was working there, every time somebody ordered an alcoholic drink in uniform at work, one of our employees said, hey, alcohol is bad for you. I don't think you should be drinking alcohol here. We'd probably fire her. Not because she doesn't have a right to oppose the consumption of alcohol, but just because in uniform at work, in a bar, I don't want somebody who we are employing to be arguing against the consumption of alcohol, right? If I owned a McDonald's, I would fire any worker who was there taking orders if they said every time somebody ordered a hamburger, hey, there's no point in you eating meat, you should order a salad instead. If I owned a Walmart and somebody at the cashier line was coming through and every time somebody ordered something, that cashier was saying abortion is murder or the opposite side of the abortion debate, I would fire them. Because you have a right to freedom of speech. You don't have a right to freedom of speech at work. And I think I think what's happening here is we know already that the NFL lost 19% of its audience during the fallout from the Colin Kaepernick protest. That is a massive amount of people decided they were not going to watch the NFL because the NFL is for them entertainment and they want to be entertained. They don't want to be reminded about politics because politics is everywhere. And therefore, if the NFL goes down this pathway again, then I think they are headed for a disaster. Their television partners will lose hundreds of millions of dollars, and a lot of people will stop watching their games because of the off-the-field related protests. Now, I'm not taking a side. I don't particularly care very strongly myself on any side other than I'm in favor of what's good for business because I'm a capitalist. Okay? And what's good for NFL business is that they play football games. And that the focal point is the football games because people like them. Now, I will say this. The reason why Roger Goodell, I believe, came out Friday and said what he did say is because right now the NFL is in the process of negotiating their television rights deals. And if television networks get nervous that they're going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars on those rights, then as a result, they're going to bid less. And if they bid less, then owners and players both make less because they share revenue. Owners and players are partners in this relationship. And so if people don't understand that, look, people say all the time, like, you're controversial. I don't think I'm that controversial. I think I'm the most reasonable person in sports media and maybe the most reasonable person in media overall. And I think that's why my audience is skyrocketing. But let's pretend that I am controversial. I don't have to worry about appealing to the entire nation. I can have a wildly successful show and a wildly successful podcast and all of these things while appealing to a niche of the overall media marketplace. But if I were in the NFL or if I owned an NFL team, I would never want to alienate any of my audience. I wouldn't want to alienate the liberals. I wouldn't want to alienate the conservatives. I wouldn't want to alienate the religious or the non-religious. I wouldn't want to alienate black people, white people, Asian people, or Hispanic people. The NFL's audience comes from the entire nation. Appealing to everyone is a big part of their brand. It's not Donald Trump's brand. Donald Trump only has to get, whatever it is, one more electoral vote than the number. What is it? 538 divided by 2. Was it 269? 270? Whatever the math is. Somebody can tell me in the chat here. I think it's 270. You only have to get to 270 in order to be elected president. You don't even have to get 50% of the vote. You can lose the majority vote, as George W. Bush did, and as Donald Trump did, and you can still be elected president. So Trump's motivation is not to reach out to the entire country, even if you think it should be. It's to win election in 2020. The NFL needs to appeal to everyone. Now, this is what I think is funny. Roger Goodell, not a cool guy. Does anybody out there think Roger Goodell, oh, that's a super cool guy? I don't think anybody thinks that. I don't think the counterculture is like, there's very few people out there cooler than Roger Goodell. All right? I'm not taking a shot at Roger Goodell. I'm just saying he represents corporate blandness. That's Roger Goodell's job. His job is to be as bland as possible, as inoffensive as possible, and as a result, in theory, his audience is as large as possible, right? That's Roger Goodell's job. Make money, avoid off-field controversy. What if Roger Goodell turned into a huge supporter of kneeling? And like everywhere he went, he was kneeling. And maybe tossing in a fist raised in power as well. Aside from being accused of cultural appropriation, which would certainly happen, isn't it likely that Roger Goodell would make protesting a lot less cool? The history of the mainstream is, the benefit of being a part of the mainstream is people pay a lot of attention to you and you get a seat at the table to discuss larger issues. The downside is you're not a revolutionary anymore. When the revolution is co-opted by capitalistic governments, like has happened honestly with Colin Kaepernick and Nike, a huge multi-billion-dollar corporation brings in this quote-unquote revolutionary and starts to sell revolutionary product as a part of capitalism. woke embrace as a part of capitalism is pretty crazy to see. The analogy that I used this morning is, as soon as your grandma and grandpa and your mom and dad got on Facebook, Facebook was so mainstream that all their kids bailed. They went to Twitter, or they went to Snapchat, or they went to Instagram, or they went to TikTok. When everyone suddenly embraces something, it loses its cachet. I'll give you an example. Out there right now, all right, a lot of people throw up the peace sign in pictures that they get taken. The peace sign during the Vietnam War was really incredibly divisive, because people are like, no, we need to be fighting this war. We've got to stop the spread of communism. Long hair, the peace sign, free love, all of those things. Now the peace sign means virtually nothing, because everybody knows it's kind of just a generalized symbol, and it doesn't really provoke much of a reaction, right? Most of you out there, boom, here you go, the peace sign, big deal. And so as a result, the peace sign has lost its power. Is it cool to protest when Roger Goodell is protesting? I think he actually makes it so uncool that people will have to move in a new direction. It's fascinating the way the mainstream works. When it embraces you within the mainstream, it makes whatever you're arguing for much less revolutionary and much less powerful, because it's now been endorsed by the man. So when Roger Goodell is coming out in favor in some way of protesting, it's kind of defeats the entire purpose of the protest. And if he raises a fist in solidarity, he will make it so uncool that a lot of the protesters will be like, man, why are we protesting like a grandpa? We got to come up with something new. And I don't know what that new thing is, but it's really pretty fascinating to think about. This is what the capitalistic mainstream does. It evolves and brings in whatever is powerful until it becomes a part of the mainstream too. And in many ways, it's diluted. Much like the national anthem itself. The national anthem is universal, but to many people, it's not that powerful because everybody is doing it. It's like saying Happy New Year, or Merry Christmas, or God bless the 4th of July, or support the troops. It doesn't mean it's any less of a slogan, but when the slogan is no longer revolutionary, it isn't that powerful. Think about it. Couple of other things. Elmer Fudd no longer has his gun, because Elmer Fudd, the cartoon character who's chasing Bugs Bunny, it was decided that his gun, cartoon gun, was too offensive. So in Looney Tunes, he now has a scythe. That's the way you pronounce it, right? The thing that like you chop down wheat with. He now has a scythe, which several of you pointed out is like way more deadly looking than an actual cartoon gun. Because with that scythe, like you lop off somebody's head, which seems more violent to me than just shooting someone. Of course, again, we're talking about a cartoon, and unless it's a major plot moment, Elmer Fudd has never caught and killed Bugs Bunny, to my knowledge. And therefore, the idea that Elmer Fudd was ever going to be able to successfully use a gun was already highly unlikely, unless you think they're going to write off Bugs Bunny and have him get shot by Elmer Fudd someday. Elmer Fudd is now like a Grim Reaper running around with a scythe. This is interesting. The LA Galaxy, and I'm curious what you guys think about this story. You can comment, obviously, as many of you are in Facebook and Periscope Live as we are here. The LA Galaxy has fired a player for racist social media posts in a foreign language, I believe, by his wife. Now, let's step back. What do you guys think about this? This isn't something that he did. This is something that his wife did. Also, as you take a step back, is the new standard that you're responsible for your whole family? And I want you to flip this. What would the reaction be if one of the women's soccer players lost her job because of what her husband tweeted? Immediately, the reaction would be, that woman can speak for herself. It's sexist of you to presume because her husband said it that she also believes it. I don't think you could fire a woman for what her husband posted because it would be sexist. But you can fire a man for what his wife posts, and it's not considered sexist. I just don't think this is a good precedent. All right? I think you should be responsible only for what you put out into the world. If someone you are related to, if your mom or your dad or your wife or your kids does something that's inappropriate, they should be responsible for it. But this is a ludicrous situation to hold, I believe, a husband responsible for what his wife says. Now, I don't need, people sometimes say to me, like, what do you, like, Clay, you're really opinionated. And I'm like, yeah, I'm opinionated, but I'm opinionated for me. If you are married, I don't care what race you are. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care what you believe in. There's probably a really good chance that your wife or your husband cancels out almost immediately about half of your political beliefs. Doesn't matter what you believe. If you have a spouse that is a strong individual, him or herself, they probably cancel out a lot of what you believe almost immediately. Like, I've joked about this before, but I don't even speak for my house. I speak for the third floor of my house. That's where my office is. The Outkick mansion is right at 8,000 square feet. I got a nice place. My office is up on the third floor of the Outkick mansion, all right? I don't even speak for the second floor or the first floor in my house because my wife controls everything else. And a lot of what I believe, she doesn't believe. Because I'm not somebody who has to be with someone who believes everything that I believe on every single subject. But this is important. I don't think cancel culture we can extend to now you're responsible for what your spouse say or what your kids say or what your parents say or anything else. This is a utterly ludicrous position to find yourself in. All right. Now, final thought. There have been a lot of dumb ideas in the 21st century. A lot of good ideas in the 21st century as well. The single dumbest idea that I have ever seen in the 21st century in the United States of America is the idea of defunding police departments. I cannot believe that anyone with a functional brain is in favor of this idea. It is pure lunacy. The police department, no matter where you live, is probably imperfect. But within that imperfection is a police force that saves thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives every single year. And interestingly, we know this because as a result of riots and protests in Ferguson, Baltimore, and Chicago, police in all of those cities, shortly after the protest and the riots and everything else, police in all of those cities stopped being as aggressive as police and started sitting back instead of behaving proactively in these cities. And do you know what happened? The murder rate skyrocketed in all of them, in Ferguson, in Baltimore, and in Chicago, which provides a perfect test case for what happens when police are just not as aggressive, not when they don't exist. Police are insanely necessary. What are you going to do if someone is robbing your house? What are you going to do if you are attacked? The idea that you wouldn't have a police force to call is one of the dumbest ideas I've ever seen before. And we know that what the data leads to. people are claiming they care about lives. Arguing that you claim that you care about lives is the exact opposite of that. Because we know that without police, there would be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of more people dead. The police are imperfect. And as I have argued for a long time, if someone who is a police officer commits a crime or is alleged to, and the evidence supports charges, then a jury should determine what their future will be, just like is the case in Minneapolis right now. But the idea that you would wipe out police funding, as many different cities, including Minneapolis, which voted to do so, are considering, is one of the dumbest ideas I have ever seen in the history of modern American life. And in fact, it is the dumbest idea that has existed in America in the 21st century. Anyone arguing this policy is either being willfully dumb or they're too dumb to be trusted with public policy decisions, because the data already reflects that it's 100% a losing proposition. I appreciate all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. Share this show. We had the biggest month ever in May. I want June to be the biggest month ever of this show as well. We have expanded Outkick in a big way. Go check out Outkick.com. Make it a big part of your rotation to ensure that you're not missing any stories. You will be glad that you did. Again, Outkick.com. We are going to roll up millions and millions of additional readers on that website in the weeks and months ahead as a result of all the hires that we have been making. I appreciate all of you. This has been Outkick. I'll see you guys tomorrow. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. Kisses. See y'all. Love you. Thank you, Facebook. See y'all.